Sometimes when people look at really successful real estate investors, they say, man, must be nice. I'd really love it if I could just have all the good breaks that they've had. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of pain and a lot of setbacks that they've had to take on.
Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Today we've got Ben Gottfredson. Now, Ben is the visionary of Big Ben's Moving and Storage and Big Storage Ventures. He excels in leading his team, delivering on promises to customers, as well as creating wealth for his partners. He has a passion for the entrepreneurial challenge and the life that it creates. He believes in prioritizing God, relationships, and experiences first. Creates the maximum fulfillment and minimum regret. So welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Really excited.
Yeah, I'm stoked to finally have you. I'm surprised we haven't done this earlier. I'm glad we're making it happen. It's funny because you and I have actually dabbled in trying to put some deals together with the storage space. I'm more of just like the single family long hold stuff, but you're the king of storage. And so I'm excited to kind of hear more of your story and how you got where you're at.
We'll get a deal, man. We almost got one to the finish line, but wouldn't have been a good thing, and we'll get the next one.
Yeah, it's much better to not get a deal than to get a mess. So sometimes that's a win is seeing. And that was what's cool about you, because I don't know anything about the storage space as a business, right? But I came across this deal and I brought it to you, and it was cool because you know that space, so I could confidently just say, hey, will you help vet this out and let's run these numbers, and you would have gotten the majority of the deal and everything. But having that expertise is priceless. And it was a really cool experience for me to just be able to, normally I'm the one running the show when people bring me deals, and it was fun to be on the other side and just let you do all the work. So I like that.
No, we had a good little team together, and I think we all brought something to the table, and you just catch the next one.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, sweet, man. So why don't you tell us maybe a little bit about your story then? Like, when did you first see real estate investing as a whole as an investment tool? You know, everybody knows about real estate. People buy houses, they live in houses. But when did you first see it as like, ooh, this is an investment tool? And then from there, what was the journey to like, this is going to be my niche of part of it?
Yeah, good question. I first fell in love with real estate by force. Like, I was always kind of a no expenses type of guy. Like, I had my service business, the moving company, Big Ben's Moving, that I just kind of ran it as lean as I could. I didn't want any expenses. But when I expanded to northern Utah from southern Utah, I needed somewhere to live because I would spend half my week up there, half my week in St. George. So I bought this house and then basically rented it out to 9 guys as like just house hacking frat house model.
Yeah. That's awesome. So that was when you first got into it, and you were running your moving company at that time, but not the storage units.
Right. That's my first taste, right? So I'm falling in love with real estate. I'm like, okay, my mortgage is $2,000, but if I rent this thing out by the room, I can, gross $4,000, and I can cash flow off this single family home really nice and have a place to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, like, good timing, but I had appreciated I had 6 figures in equity in less than a year that I pulled out, and I could go ahead and do whatever I wanted to with that. So I'm seeing the power of real estate come really fast. And meanwhile, with my moving company, I'm having people call me, hiring us to do their move, saying, can you do our storage as well? And we would just say no, and we'd pass them off. But I realized that I had this gap. I had this lead generation for this awesome commercial asset, and I just didn't know how to own or build a storage facility.
That's awesome. So the storage really came as more of a business venture than a real estate expansion, but you kind of saw it all as one piece together.
Yeah, and storage, we always say that it really is a business because, and we'll get into like maybe some of the deeper mechanics of storage, but you have all the upside of a real estate asset that we love, like the tax breaks, the appreciation, the cash flow, but you also have all the benefits of a business too. Like there's a lot of creative things you can do rather than just setting up a lease, like that make it really special. And so while a lot of people see storage as something that you kind of set up and then you just kind of let it ride, there's a lot of things you can do actively to squeeze more juice out of it, more like a business. So
See, that's cool to hear you say, because that's what I've always thought of it. I've always looked at like people like, oh, real estate, storage. And I'm like, well, that's like, I've never really dabbled in it because I'm like, well, that's like a business. Like, I don't know. I have to like market it and like run it, and there's competition. And that was one thing when you and I were running this deal together. We're like, ooh, there's this other big name coming in the exact, like it's in a nearby area. How big of a facility are they going to build? And it's like, it's all the like the business competition and all these different avenues that aren't normally considered. When I'm just buying a single family house, I'm like, yep, there's other houses, whatever. It doesn't really matter the same as it does when it comes to like competitive business. But there is a big element to that with the storage facility, especially if you want to like maximize your money.
yeah, so you see a bigger swing. Like if it's an oversupplied market or if it's a bigger if there's more threats, you can get in big trouble. But if as long as you do it right and stick with fundamentals, the margins are way better in storage than other real estate classes too. So you have a little bit of a swing there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So that's cool. So you're running the storage units or the moving company. You're running the moving company. You start doing this awesome little house hack where you can live for free and makes more money. And then what did it look like? You saw there was this gap there. You're like, I need to fill that gap. I need to take advantage of that, but I don't know anything about it, which a lot of people are like, feel that way with real estate. Like, I want to do this, but I don't know anything about it. How did you fix that? How did you solve that problem and learn enough about it to actually do something?
Yeah, and I would probably do it different than I did. So what I did was just I beat my head against the wall and I went and I just tried to do it versus like finding a strategic partner or a coach, which is what I do now. Like the first time I did this, I said, okay, I'm going to figure this out on my own. So I went to every different bank in town and I would, give them my spreadsheet and then they would throw the spreadsheet back at me and say how wrong it was, right? Like they wanted me to do it like, very conservative, which is fine. And they wanted me to do it their way. But then I would take the feedback that one bank gave me and I would go to a different branch of the same bank and then pitch it to that banker.
Mm,
So I went to over a dozen banks just kind of learning the feedback that they gave me before the third banker at Cache Valley Bank gave me a shot. So there's a lot that goes into it with just practicing the underwriting. You have to get to know your architect. You have to get to know what construction costs are. But it's something that I learned the hard way, kind of just trial and error and just not giving up. Like I got rejected over a dozen times, but just keep sticking with it and keep learning. And that's really what I would say pushed us over the edge on that first deal.
and you're getting rejected from the lenders. You're trying to get a loan to fund the purchase, and no one wanted to give you money.
Yeah, because my moving company is taking off, but in their mind, it's like, yeah, who cares? One good year of tax returns. We need three. I'm like, no, I don't have time. I'm not gonna wait 3 years on this. Like, I need this storage facility like now. So there was a lot of like, because I'm like 24 years old, so there's a lot of, you're sharp, but you're just a little young. You know what I mean?
Right. That's cool. So you kind of just push through it, but that's interesting. A lot of people in the real estate space say like, "Oh yeah, you just got to take action, take action, take action." But you were like, you would have preferred to bring in a partner or a mentor or a coach or something like that. You feel like that would have been better than just doing it on your own.
Yeah, because now, right, I had a chance to look at that deal. The first deal, we worked hard and we were very fortunate. So it panned out really well. But I'm like, okay, I could do one of these deals on my own, maybe every 3 years with the money I make off the moving company and kind of snowball these. or I could put together a series of deals every single year. And so what we've done is I've learned with the abundance mentality, just cutting other partners in, paying for coaching. Like I have a full-time storage investing coach that I pay for, where before I probably would have said that's a little bit, I couldn't justify it. I just had the fixed mindset. So
Mm.
now paying for coaching, cutting people in, I'm the minority partner on almost all my deals, right? So, but I just believe in this asset class and wanting to be a part of the most amount of deals as possible, that it's worth it to me. And that's a big paradigm shift that I've had as we've grown Big Storage Ventures, which is our storage investment piece.
That's awesome. So let's talk about that. So you partner with all these different people, and every deal kind of looks different. You said you're the majority on some, but you're the minority on a lot of them. But that's
Yeah.
okay because your ultimate goal is just to collect and be a part of as many assets as you can.
Yeah, exactly. So we realize that if we want to build a syndication business, which is what we do, we're going to need to cut people in and have, I put a lot of my own money into the deal, but I just don't have enough. So we
Mm-hmm.
cut other people in who they have the money for storage units and they've always wanted to. I think a lot of people, they always tell me like, "Oh, I've wanted to own storage units for years, but I just don't have the know-how to get it to the finish line." So that's what we do. We find the deals, we negotiate with the sellers, we underwrite, we plan. You got a sneak peek at that process.
Yeah.
And then when we get them to the finish line, a lot of these people have other businesses. And so we make it passive for them and just mailbox money, just send them a check and they can be as involved as they want on the deal and learn all about our processes and everything that goes into running a storage facility, or they can be super passive and just collect the check every month.
And that's what I liked about it because, like I said, I wasn't interested in learning the business of storage units and marketing and advertising, keeping it filled, and like all that world. Like, not that I couldn't learn it, just isn't. I don't know. This wasn't something I wanted to learn. But I was like, oh, but I could do it passively with you running it and me coming in as a partner, finding the deal or funding the deal, and then you run it. I think it's so cool. Like I said, everybody can bring something to the table, you know, and if you do bring something to the table, you get a piece of the pie. And if you do the part that you like and that you're good at and that you've structured and streamlined, it's like you can scale it. Like you said, it's hard to fund every deal yourself. You know, even the wealthiest people I know of, they don't fund everything themselves. You know what I mean? It's like they bring in other people, and it's kind of like 1+1 is 3. Even though it might make sense, oh, if I just do it myself, then I get the full return. I'd make more, but it doesn't really seem to turn out that way.
Right. Yeah. You get to spread your resources over deals, which it is a multiplying effect. Right. So if everyone gets a chance to be a part of multiple deals, there's just a lot of economies of scale that come with that. And so sometimes people are shocked when we're like, yeah, we'll cut you in just for bringing the deal, kind of like a finder's fee. They're like, that's it. It's like, yeah, like that's really valuable to us. And then other people, they can do sweat equity to earn it. And other people, they don't have to do any of the work. They just bring their hard-earned dollars. And so there's so many different ways to skin a cat on a deal structure like that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like if people can focus on their expertise, then it's easier too for them to get it done. Because if you guys are good at running the whole show and you have a whole system in place and do that, instead of me learning that, if you do that, but I can find deals really good, then I'll just focus on that, and you don't have to waste all your time finding deals. And it's like everybody can just be better at what they're doing instead of everybody being watered down trying to do it all. And then it's just like it's just there's more for everyone.
And what I would say, kind of for the audience, right? Like a lot of the people they're participating in real estate investing school, like a lot of them have already taken their business to the moon. A lot of them are doing insanely cool things, right? But a lot of the audience is still trying to figure out what's their niche or what are they going to be doing. And I would say even if you're just doing your first residential deal, just have the mindset of a commercial real estate investor. Like obviously
Mm.
I'm partial to storage facilities and commercial real estate. Like my advice is get to commercial as fast as you can, right? But even if you're just going to stick with residential, you got to have almost like the mentality of a commercial real estate investor. Like you got to know that this is a business and you're going to need systems to scale if you ever want to have a significant amount of wealth that comes out of your time and money.
Let's dive into that because I think that's something a lot of people see happen too. It's like, oh, people start out with a house hack and then they, buy a couple single families. And once they have a handful of single families, they move into multifamily and then into commercial. And it's kind of like, that's kind of like the syndications, or whatever. That's almost like where the big dogs always end up. But let's talk about your view on that. Like when you say commercial, what do you mean by that? And why is it so important? Why do you encourage everybody to jump into that?
Well, I'll just tell you my personal experience. I didn't do just one of those frat houses, as I like to call them. I did multiple.
Mm,
And so I basically just didn't have the patience to wait for the next storage deal to come. So when I made money, I would just spend it on a single family house that I knew I could do that with. And meanwhile, I'm scaling the storage business and I'm buying a couple of these frat houses. And I'm realizing that the margins are just so much better on storage facilities. And I already have a budget set aside and a system built out for the property management.
mm,
So on my single family homes, it's like I was the property manager. So I have this business that I'm making way more money off of the storage side than I'm putting my personal time into managing these frat houses. And I'm realizing like there's just not enough budget. I have to either do the property management myself or I have to hire a residential home property manager as well. So my epiphany is like you have to reverse engineer it and realize that even if it's really sweet right now, you if you had to delegate out all the work you're doing, you have to look at it from that lens because that's where it's going to end up.
yeah, I love that because that's a lot. Most people get in real estate wanting some degree of freedom and passivity. Most people aren't just like, oh, I can make a lot of money there. There's definitely that element, but a lot of people are wanting that freedom. And like I said, if you're self-running everything because you don't have a structure that you can delegate, then you kind of get capped out. And what I've seen happen personally is if I start to get, how do I say this? Like, I don't buy as much when when I'm stressed out about the load because I'm like, I don't want to add more load to myself. I'm like, I don't want more properties if I'm dealing with it myself because that's going to be a bigger headache for me. I remember I was in the sales world. I used to do door to door sales, and I would meet with certain recruits, and there'd kind of be a holdback. I'm like, do I want to deal with this guy all summer? Like, do I really want him on my team? Do I want another person? But when my regional manager would meet with guys, he would just recruit like nonstop and just like bring him in, bring him in, bring him in. And I'm just like, yeah, because he doesn't have to deal with any of them. He gets to
Yeah.
just assign them to an office and not worry about it. And so he had zero like stop to his push. And I've seen the same thing with my real estate investing is if I have to deal with every headache myself, I pull back just a little bit. But like I said, if you have a system and a team in place where you can just push it into that system, you're just like, let's go, let's blow this up.
Yeah, I think that's it right there. Like knowing that you have a system and you have someone else that has the bandwidth to take it on,
Mm-hmm.
that's what starts to make it sweet. And you get into like a very controversial topic that I think a lot of people are torn on, including like the real estate investing school community. We know that Brody, like he's very very diversified. Like he has his hands in everything. But
Mm-hmm.
if you ask me, like I'm strictly staying in my niche. That's just maybe it's my personality, maybe it's my strategy, but I got to stay in my niche to get the most out of my time and money. Where other people they're going to tell you that just find the very best deal and it all works out. So
Well, and I think that comes from the business side of it too. Like, say, you don't look at it as, oh, I'm going to manage some real estate portfolio and have some passive income. You're running a business. They're in them together, and I think that's where that strength comes from and that mindset comes from, as opposed to like, oh, I'll just do a deal here or there or whatever. I think there's a lot of power in running it as a business, even if it's not, even if it is single family or frat houses or whatever it is. If you look at it as a business as opposed to just a couple deals here and there, it does kind of change how much you want to focus, because the biggest thing with business is those systems and those patterns. And if you're recreating the wheel every deal because they're all so different, that that slows you down.
That's it. That's it right there. Is like, even if you're just going to stick with the frat house hack model, you got to have the end in mind and have that system built out. Well said.
That's cool, and that this is good. This clicks with me because those are definitely things I've considered. I've mentioned many times. I'm like, I don't want to run a business. I don't want to deal with teams or get people or be responsible. I just want to manage my portfolio. But I'm feeling that funnel, right? Where I'm like, not funnel's not the right word, but cap, right? Where it's all like it's getting clogged. Where I'm like, now I don't want to deal with everything because it's becoming too big of a portfolio. So the only step is either pull back or make it run it more like a business, which is necessary when you hit a certain point.
There's this phenomenon, like, it's hard to explain. A lot of people that I talk to, they speak about like growing a business, whether it be like my service business or my real estate business, and they speak about like, well, when are you going to just cap it and let it kind of level out and kind of plateau? And like, in my head, that doesn't really work. Like, letting your foot off the gas like that, it's against the nature of business. Like,
Mm-hmm.
businesses naturally need to be scaled, and they need to be, you have to have that growing period of scaling and then refining and scaling and then refining. But in my experience, like, just flatlining and just trying to maintain has never really worked for me. That's just what I've seen.
I agree, man. It's like there's no standing still, and then I think that carries over to almost everything in life, like your health. You know what I mean? Like it's really hard to be like, I'm just gonna maintain. It's like when I'm maintaining, I'm moving backwards. I'm pretty happy, I like it, and then it's like, oh, a few months pass, you're like, dude, I'm not in as good a shape as I was. You think you're maintaining. Same thing with just if you look at money, just because of inflation,
Yep.
you could be running a business or whatever, and if you could be making the same, let's say $1 million a year in your business, but if that's all you do and you maintain $1 million a year, you're that's not good in 10 or 20 years from now, because that's worth half of what it was when you used to be making a million. And so it's like you have to be growing, you have to be improving, either going forward or you're going backwards, is what I've found in every aspect of my life: relationships, health, finances, all of it. I think you nailed that.
Even like, we're playing the city league basketball tonight. It's like same thing. If you start to coast, like, have you ever seen a basketball game where the team's up by like 10 points? There's like two
Mm.
minutes left, and they just start to pass the ball around, try to burn clock. If they're really good, they can squeak out a win that way. But a lot of times what happens is when they stop being aggressive, that's when bad things happen. They make one careless pass, and all of a sudden you cut the lead to 7. And you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just in everything in life, if you start to get passive or start to get less aggressive, that's when you open yourself up for bad stuff to happen.
100%. Well, and especially in business, like say, because it is competitive. I like that you compared it to like the game, because I'm thinking, oh yeah, you're just passing the ball, but the other team is like so hungry and wanting to win, and they're 7 behind or 10 behind or whatever, and they're like, and they get extra aggressive. And so you maintaining status quo, what you were doing to win and stay ahead the whole game, all of a sudden at that end, there's so much fire in the opponent's blood that they're coming and doing things they didn't do the whole game. Like, what? Wait, who is this team? Like, well, that's not who we were playing. And that's how it is with business. Like if you sit back, someone else will step in and they'll push harder. And so you gotta just show up and keep improving and going faster and harder.
That's it.
But I love how you pointed out that there's an ebb and flow to that. You're like, you scale, and then you said you kind of almost retract a little bit, recalibrate, take the lessons, and then go up even bigger than before, and then come back a little bit, like 5 steps forward, 1 step back, 5 steps forward, 1 step back. We kind of recalibrate a little bit. Maybe I misinterpreted that, but what's your thoughts on that?
No, you got it. And what it is just like, I think we talked about this at our mastermind, maybe this metaphor of like, when you see the bodybuilders, they'll bulk and then they'll cut,
Mm.
right? So they're still moving towards their ultimate goal, but they have like those phases, right? So for example, in business, you're going to hire 5 people, and you're going to do your best to vet them, make sure they're good, but then you might have to fire one to get to where you need to go, right? So we had that real life example where, we hire, you know, 5 people in our storage business to run that, but then one of them turns out to be, a bad investment. We have to fire that person, readjust our systems, and then keep going, right? So and another thing is like payroll too, right? So storage investors that are scaling a business, they're going to have to bring someone on their team, and that pay that you're putting out there, that's discretionary income that you're deciding to share to buy back your time. And it sucks at first until they start to pay off, right? But once they pay off, you get to this point where that's a very profitable system. But guess what? Once it's profitable, then it's the time to do it again. Then you have to hire
Mm.
someone else who becomes short term unprofitable. But in the long term, if your system's thought out the right way, that's a profitable move. So that's what I'm referring to. And you described it perfectly.
So let's talk a little bit about staying in the game and resilience and like what that means to you and your perspective on that, because this stuff doesn't happen overnight. You said, how old are you now, Ben?
29.
29. So you said you were like 24 when you were first kind of seeing the success in your business and be like, oh, I got to expand to storage units. This means, I don't know, how old were you when you even started your moving business?
Yeah, I mean, it was a side hustle. I was playing sports growing up, but let's just say 20, 21. Let's just
Yeah,
say that's when
21. And that's fun. Even if it's a side hustle, it's still like that's usually how things start. They start out slow. You learn a little bit, you learn a little bit, you learn a little bit. So I mean, you've been in the game for almost a decade. It doesn't happen overnight, and you're still growing. You're it's not like you're done. You know what I mean? You're just getting
I,
started in what you want to accomplish. But let's talk about that a little bit.
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is this is not a get rich quick scheme. Like none of it. Whether you're talking about uh, real estate, self storage, like it's a lot of times we start out with single digit returns, and then it's not till a few years later where we refinance and turn it into triple digit returns, right?
Mm.
So the game, and we set the expectations for our investors is like, look, you got to be in this for a while. And same thing with the service business. A lot of people think they can start a service business and make it big in less than 12 months. That's the exception. I think it takes 4 years of taking punches before you can see something pop and really start to get passive and start to get very lucrative, right? So I think I think being resilient, believing in what you're doing, and knowing that you're going to have to take several years of punches and getting back up again to really build any sort of wealth, right? And I think a lot of people think that being the smartest or having the biggest calculator brain or anything like that is what's going to get them there, but it's really just the person that's willing to keep going. And when bad stuff happens, which we could rattle off a dozen crazy things, crazy setbacks that have happened, and you just keep getting back up, that's what sets people apart.
Okay, I actually do want to dive into some of those setbacks. So we hear these stories all the time. It's always this generic, like, oh, you're going to get punched in the face, keep going, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's dive into what are some of the things you've seen either you or your, people in your business. What are like, let's list a bunch of the crap that does knock you down. And like, why does it need to be 4 or 5 years before you're really profitable? What are the things people are running into and facing?
Well, so there's two parts of the questions, right? So like the reason that takes a lot of time to get that traction is, you know, set aside from all the issues that come up, right? Even if your business goes perfect, like to really scale, it just takes time for people to know you and for you to be able to hire and delegate and get some real traction and bust into a market, take up market share. So that on its own is its own set of tough things, right? On real life examples of stuff that's happened to me, right? You get a call at 4 a.m. that your truck hit ice, right? All of a sudden,
Mm.
that's a huge, huge setback, right? You have someone that backstabs you, right? Someone working for you that all of a sudden they poach all your clients and they start another business and they use your equipment, or they commit payroll theft and they steal a bunch of money from you. On the real estate side, like you can get into a lawsuit, right? Like this, we're under contract for something and our real estate agent tells us that the due diligence deadline is one day, but it ends up being a different day. So all of a
Mm,
sudden you're in this huge lawsuit that you've never been in before, and it's just over a detail. And it's like
yeah.
you you would think that the seller would just show you some mercy as a guy in your 20s, but they want blood, right?
Yeah.
You have to, sue your real estate agent, and that you get sued and no one really comes out alive. And then we have, most of our projects have gone as good as we projected or better, but sometimes there's setbacks. And that's why you have to have a margin of stupidity in all your deals in case something goes sideways. And so you have to stay nimble. I'll give you an example. I'm rattling off a bunch, but on the
This
real
is good.
estate
Yeah.
side, we had this storage facility that we thought we're going to build out 90,000 square feet of storage, which is good, but maybe a little over ambitious. This was in the hottest high point of the market.
Okay.
So luckily, like we have pivots, like we have outs. So instead of building all of it, we're just going to build half of it, right? Like 45,000 square feet of storage. And then we can, basically make it work, and we're going to phase the project and do some creative things. But it just goes to show that this is not always pretty. This is not always like perfect, and it's very messy. And I think sometimes when people look at really successful real estate investors, they say, man, must be nice. I'd really love it if I could just have all the good breaks that they've had. But I think behind the scenes, there's a lot of pain and a lot of setbacks that they've had to take on.
Yeah, no, I love that. There are so, like say, the variety of the issues that you can run into are endless. And that's entrepreneurship. Like that's business. Like that is working for yourself. That's creating anything, is you just run into stuff. I remember when I was very first starting my sales career, and like I thought the hard thing would be to learn how to sell, because I was like, I don't know how to sell, I don't know how to do this, convince people to buy stuff. Like, and then I quickly learned, I'm like, no, it's dealing with like the whole phone system's going down. You can't even call in to sign the customer up. And then like the paperwork is incorrect. And then there's like this shortage of equipment. And so you do sell the person that you can't even install the equipment. And like there's just all these little things like, and how do you roll with those punches? And not only can you fix that, yeah, you can wait a day, get the new part, but how do you mentally and emotionally stay as an A player when it keeps being just like mess, issue. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to fix these issues and then I'll be smooth. When I'm running the office, like it'll be good. We won't have a shortage of this because I'll be more on top of it. But then there's 1,000 other things. It's like, oh, to win the game of business and life, you just have to be able to manage your emotions and your positivity and your vision, your outlook while all this is happening. Not fix all that, because you need to fix what you can, but while the mess is happening, it doesn't throw you. And that was a huge paradigm shift for me.
Exactly. I think a couple things that maybe people could examine while they're thinking along that same track, right? Excellence versus perfectionism,
Mm,
right? I think a big advantage for me is that I'm not a perfectionist, right? I don't make my bed in the morning, right? Like I don't have a lot of these things that people swear by, and I think it helps me because I'm committed to excellence in my output, my team, like everything we do, it has to be excellent. But I'm not going to get paralyzed, right, by something not being exactly perfect. And so I think that's a really big advantage. We talked about taking punches, right? Think about like a literal fight, right? Like if I was to literally fight someone, probably like my strength, I'm not that coordinated, have never had a bunch of practice, but what would really make me a pain to fight is like that mental toughness, that resilience. So I think these are the types of things that people look at.
Yeah, man, I love that. I think that's so key. And it's funny because a lot of the people I've interviewed, they had some pretty big hits right at the beginning. Like, they like house flippers and they lose like 100 grand on their first flip because they didn't know what they're doing. It's like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. But then they stayed in the game and it's like you learn lessons from each hit and then you fix that. And then another hit can come. And then another hit. It's almost like, well, how many issues can you deal with so that you can get to the next issue and get to the next issue and get to the next issue? It's not till there's no more issues. It's just like fighting different problems, finding different issues to deal with, because that means you are expanding. If you're still dealing with the exact same issue every single time, you probably need to focus and learn that lesson so that you can go tackle bigger problems.
Yeah, and you develop a stress tolerance
Yeah.
too. I think that's something that from day one, like the littlest stuff is gonna keep you up at night, right? And then like now today, someone would literally have to die for me to get rattled, like knock on wood, right? But my point is that now it's like my stress tolerance is so high that it's just because I've practiced and I've hung in there. And I think you develop hopefully a strength of what I like to call triage. And what I mean is like, think of like a army doctor when they have someone come in to the medical facility, they have like three people that are all bleeding. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this one's for sure going to die. This one's for sure going to live. But this one in the middle, I could probably save them and do the most good for this person, right? And then they save their life and then they move on to the next one. So I think having, because in your business, there's someone always dying and there's someone that would be easy for you to handle that's always going to be okay if you were to do the hard stuff first. But I think identifying your impact corner, right, where you could do the most good right now, that's what helps people create a lot of value.
Man, that's money. Those are two really good, distinct points of success, right? The triage, knowing exactly where to focus on when it needs it the most, and the stress tolerance. And I think that's kind of what I was referring to before. Is like when yeah, like if every little thing throws you off and every little thing stresses you out, is really hard to grow and expand. But once you build that up, and yeah, most successful people I know, I remember I had this manager and he just I'd never seen him lose his cool. Like I never seen him lose his cool. And it blew my mind. And it would bother me because I'll be like, maybe I'd be losing my cool, especially when I was beginning, in that business world. And I'd be like frustrated about a thing. And he would just always be calm, cool, collected. And it's like that strength, despite the whole world falling apart. Not only does it help you actually think clearly so you can triage the situation correctly, but it makes it so that you're not just getting thrown off every single time something goes wrong.
Because what was that guy's role?
Yeah, he was
That
like this manager running teams and everything like that.
Yeah, he's a leader, right? And
He's a
so
leader.
like one of my things that I don't see a big way that you can get around it is developing a team, right? And so when you have a team, eventually like my company's got to the point where now I have middle management, where now I'm not like the only leader. I'm like leading the leaders, right? And so not only is my example really important and just having that rock that's never going to get rattled running the show, but also helping the leaders see that they need to be the same way and they need to learn how to pick their battles, right? So a lot of times we get so worked up. I remember I have my mom on payroll, and whenever anything would go wrong, my mom, she has a high standard of excellence. So she would just like, this is not okay. That we should fire them. Like we gotta keep this together, right? And I'd be like, come on, like, what is that going to do if we just fire everybody? Then we have no one left, right?
Yeah.
We have to pick our battles. We have to be patient. We have to attack this the right way. And so I think when you're scaling a team, it's only going to serve you if you can have that never get too high, never get too low mentality.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. Like I think that's such a huge like underrated skill. And it is a skill. Like it's not like, oh, well, Ben's just so level headed. He's always been that way. He's so cool, like, and then maybe you have, but for me, I had to like learn that. I came from a home where it was like, we weren't like short fuse fight, but like, man, arguing was a sport. I mean, we would just battle to wits end and devil's advocate this and battle that. And like, I don't know, I had to learn to like change my stars a little bit and recorrect and not let everything stress me out. I had to, I got to that point where like big things would happen. It's like, okay, well, we'll figure it out, but it's a skill you can learn. So, that's hot headed as somebody might be right now, like you can become where Ben's at, where it's just calm, cool, no matter what's going on. He's not freaking out. Like, even if everything throws you, like, it's a skill that can be developed and learned no matter who you are or where you're at. And it's when you have to keep perfecting and learning because the stresses get bigger. You know what I mean? You got more and more people, like I said, your mom was on payroll. You don't want to have to fire her and fire everybody else. And there's people's livelihoods on you. They're like, Ben, we're counting on you. Like that's a lot of pressure. And so the stresses get bigger and you have to keep growing that stress muscle of not letting things take you down.
Yeah, I wouldn't say to give me a whole lot of credit. Like honestly, my nature is very quick tempered. Like I think of
Mm.
people that would have known me in high school, right? Would have just like very aggressive, very hot tempered, very like no filter with anything I said at all. And no, I'm not perfect. Sometimes
We
I
don't know if
still
that one's changed yet. I've been to dinner with you before.
yeah, I'm still not perfect, but my point is like I would not give me like a whole lot of credit for changing. I would just say like my business would not survive. It's not really like a choice. Like if you want to scale a company, you don't get to like decide if you want to be quick tempered or not. It's like you have to have that, you have to develop that or else you die, right? Like
Yeah.
you can read books on business owners who just could never keep it together and then their whole company like implodes, falls apart on itself. And so I see it as more like a requirement, like you're never going to have something big if you can't do that.
Yeah, I love that, man. I want to dive into some of our final four questions with enough time to really kind of dig into them, not just like a
Sure.
fire round.
Yeah.
But if people do want to reach out to you, Ben, and be a part of what you're doing, because you do a lot with other people. It's not just like, hey, I want to follow your journey and see and be kind of inspired because you're doing stuff, but like you're doing partnerships, you're running syndications, people are going to play different roles. Like say you'll even give long-term equity just for finding a deal, which is hard to come by nowadays. Like that's really, really cool. What kind of things are you looking for if people wanted to come be a part of what you're doing, and how can they reach out and kind of build something with you?
Yeah, we're really making a focus on being very approachable. So you can always feel free to DM Big Storage Ventures or my personal account Ben Gottfredson. And I just hired two more executives in Big Storage Ventures, on a long term basis, so I could have the bandwidth to be approachable, to take DMs, to take phone calls, and coach people through it. And really, our goal is that everybody owns storage units and everybody owns commercial real estate. And whether like we're a part of that or not doesn't really matter as much as just building that community and building that network. So I would say, with anything, any questions in general, business wise, I love to nerd out and jam. But anything storage specific, like we look at deals for free, we coach people to the finish line and help negotiate. So that's where you find us. Those are the two best ways.
Awesome. So Instagram's a great way, and then it sounds like they can actually get a hold of you.
Yeah, just DM me your phone number and I'll call.
That's awesome. I think that's a huge value that you guys can provide, especially in the quality of what you're doing. A lot of times like these little beginners will do that because they have no deals. I had a guy reach out to me like, "Hey, would you if I give you like a commission off of everybody that did a loan with me, will you send me people?" And I'm like, "Dude, that'd be cool. I recommend lenders all the time." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Sweet. Like how big's your team? Like how many deals do you do a month?" Da, da, da. And he's like, "Well, we haven't really like been around that long. I'm like, how many deals? Like, well, I've done 3. I'm like, 3 deal. You funded 3 loans. Like, no way in hell am I going to recommend my students or anybody I interview to go to a lender who's done 3 deals. Like, he doesn't even know the crap he's going to face to get people through the finish line. You got to be. I was just like, no, like that's not going to happen. So my point is there's a lot of unqualified people that are very approachable and want everybody to work with them, and they'll give you the world if you like talk to them, because they have way more bandwidth than they do success. But if someone like you, as you guys, you actually know what you're doing. You've brought many, many, many deals through the finish line, and you have that quality and that credibility, but you're still open to teaching and helping people. Like, that's a gift for those listening that want to participate. And it was cool for me. Like, I got to participate in this as we were putting that one deal together, and it
Yeah.
was a cool experience, and I'm excited for the next one.
It's fun to be in the sweet spot where you're like, exactly what you're doing, but you're still not so big and so corporate that your phone's off, So it's
Yeah.
fun to be in that sweet spot.
Okay. All right. So I got a question here. So final 4 questions. I know we'd sent you these before, but I changed them, so you haven't heard all of them yet. So,
Ooh, love it.
um, yeah, exactly. Keep it on your toes. You're like, I gotta go. Time's up, everybody. If you had to start your real estate journey over, but you know what you know now, what would be your first, second, or maybe third move?
Finding. Yeah. So for me, uh, they say he who has the gold makes the rules, but really he who has the deal demands the gold.
Yeah.
So I think, the biggest, and we just hired a full-time acquisitions executive because of this, because really whoever has the deal, we feel like we're in this golden age on this asset class where it's still not fully consolidated and there's so much left out there. And this is the same for a lot of other residential and commercial asset classes, that it's just about whoever's going to find it first, whoever's turning over the most rocks, whoever has the best strategy to drum up business and hunt deals. That would be like, if I had to start over, I would be spending a lot of time on that, because you can create value wholesaling, partnering, anything, if you can do that.
I love that. And it's like, it doesn't take a lot of skill or knowledge or experience or money. If you can find a deal, you can play the game and you'll be in the rooms with the people that have the money. If you can find deals, like, it doesn't matter who you are. Like, no one's too good. Like, if you have a good deal, like that, like I said, that speaks. No one cares anything else,
Yeah, I mean, you would be surprised, if you can find good deals, how fast you'll have access to like celebrities and people in the NFL that just want to place their money. Like we've had that, we've got introductions to NFL football players just because it's like, yeah, like we want to get in on these deals. So that's a great thing. And other thing I'd say is like the finding, then there's the operations, the property management. Like that's a great skill set. And if my business crumbled, like I'd probably, whether it was residential property management or commercial property management, getting that operation side down and building out those systems is an incredibly lucrative thing to do as well.
Yeah, it's cool. I actually had a student just message me like, "Hey, I'm looking at I want to start another part-time job, and I want it to be in real estate." And I think that's awesome. It's like, yeah, go work for a wholesaler, go work for a property manager, see the backside of how everything's done, and that'll give you such an awesome foundation for when you start to hire it out or do it yourself or however you're going to grow. I think that's awesome. That's a great answer. All right, Ben, question number 2. What is a book or podcast you would recommend?
Outside of Real Estate Investing School podcast, Beyond Net Worth podcast,
Yeah, those two, of course, but besides those.
I mean, I love Traction. Like Traction has become kind of the Bible for my business, both my service business and my real estate investing business. And so I think it's a great way to kind of get your implementation down. There's lots of good business books about motivation, but that's as far as like if I could just because I'm making a recommendation to this audience, assuming that they're already motivated. Like if you don't
Right.
have if you don't have the motivation, like you haven't eaten enough ham sandwiches and you haven't worked enough days clocking in for a job. Like the motivation should be there. If you're just the fact that people are listening to this podcast when they could be watching, Breaking Bad says something about them, right? The fact that they're going to make that sacrifice. So really what you need to know how, right? You need to get that implementation down. And I think traction is a good starting spot.
I love that. And just that principle of like the boring book that's just like the nitty-gritty stuff is what's most lacking in, out there today, because there's so much motivational stuff and it's good stuff. There's really good content. Take your pick. You follow anybody on social media, it's like all the inspiration and all the good quotes, and it wasn't always like that. I remember back in the day I came across like a Jim Rohn CD and is like, what is this stuff? Like it was like mind-boggling. It was so cool. Now it's a dime a dozen, all this stuff, but the people who are actually like teaching the boring stuff that's not clickbaity, that isn't fun in a 1 minute soundbite, like the books like Traction, it's like, this is how you create a system and do this and this and this. They're actually way more exciting once you dive in because it'll make a difference. It's applicable. You can use it. It's not just like get you excited and then now what do I do? It's like, this is what you do. So anyway, that whole concept, find more books like that, find more people like that, find more podcasts like that. We'd have a plethora of exciting stuff, but the boring stuff is to me more exciting because then I can actually do something with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that. All right, 2 questions. Second last one. What is an expensive mistake or interesting, I say, expensive or interesting mistake that you've made in real estate investing?
Hmm. Expensive mistake.
Or just
Yeah,
interesting.
I would say like one mistake that I'll say you got to be careful with is going with the cheapest number, right? So sometimes that pans out okay. Sometimes that can ruin your life, right? So
So what do you
we
mean
have,
by the cheapest number? Like buying the cheapest thing, or what do you mean?
yeah. So I'm referring to like, for example, an architect or a general contractor, right? They're going to have different numbers, right? And so there's a range there. And I think I'm not saying you never go with the cheapest number or one of the ones towards the lower end, but I'm saying that you got to be really clear about what your priorities are. And also like include, like, if you get a contract, include some conditions like liquidated damages. So for example, like we go with the lowest number on this architect and they take literally like 24 months to do their set of plans when we were assuming they were going to be like 3 or 4 months,
Mm,
right? And we went with the lowest number. There was other hiccups, like, they're not like dishonest terrible people, but they just didn't understand the full scope of the job. So we go with the lowest number on a different type of job and they do a fine job, right? same
right.
same but that's something that can really mess you up. I think the other thing I hinted at, having a margin of stupidity in deals, right?
Yeah, I
So
like
like
that.
if you have to have everything go perfect for the deal to work, it's a bad deal. I don't care if it's, like sometimes you can make that conscious decision of just you're trying to bust into real estate by any means necessary and you need a deal that's like maybe mediocre or break even just to learn and earn your stripes. But
Right.
just be super careful because everything won't go perfect. So if you're paying for something off pro forma, numbers that don't exist, if you're assuming the very best in the market, that's going to get you in trouble.
I think that's such good advice. If everything has to work out right for it to be a good deal, it is not a good deal. Because that's how we started this whole thing, right? Is like lists of issues that are going to happen. You don't know what they are, but they will happen. And if for some magical reason you're wrong, this is the one deal that will work out. then like, great, it was even more profitable. You know what I mean? But you don't want to bet on that. You want to bet on things going south.
That's where this whole thing ends up, is it's like you're gonna put together 3 sets of underwriting: your worst case doomsday scenario, your realistic scenario, and your best case scenario. And you're always going to want to assume that things are going to go the worst case scenario and hope that they just pop. And we've had that happen where I started out like the banks made me put in like doomsday scenario numbers to turn into them for the loan. But that first deal, that one really popped. So even though we gave them the bad projections, like we were ready if that was the case, but it really popped and did well. So it's almost like if you prepare that way and plan on it going bad, it's almost more likely to go well.
Yeah, and because if it doesn't, it still went well, right? When things do go wrong, it's like, yeah, like that's fine. I was listening to this quote, like Dave Ramsey was, crapping on real estate investors. Oh, you can't live off of real estate because there's going to be vacancies and there's going to be, repairs and there's going to be, I'm like, yeah, I calculated that all into my calculator before I bought the property. Like I knew all that was going to happen. And when it does go south and there is all these issues, I'm still winning because I prepared for it. And if they don't have, and then like say, then you're really, really winning. But either way, you're winning if you're prepared, which is what you're saying, which is awesome.
Screw Dave Ramsey.
Yes, Dave Ramsey. All right. All right. One word, why you love real estate investing.
If I had to narrow it down to one word, I would say powerful. I'll say powerful because,
I like that.
it crossed my mind like, okay, well, it's like a solid investment, but we even like to clarify, like it's not recession proof. It's just recession resistant, right? Like
Yeah.
this is not something without any risk. So I couldn't say that. But I think when you look at what it can do, powerful is a little bit vague, but the power that it has to really create wealth and between the big three, right, which are cash flow, equity, and the tax advantages,
Mm-hmm.
this can take someone from financially nothing to financially set for life. And that's powerful. You can open up yourself to serve, you can open up yourself to follow your passion and your dreams. You can live a life with no regrets. That's the power of real estate.
I love that. Powerful. That's a good word to use there. Well, Ben, this has been a treat. Thanks so much for your time and sharing your experiences, your knowledge, and a way for people to reach out to you. Thanks for being here.
Dude, thank you, Joe. Thanks for being the face of the real estate investing school.
I love it, man. Well, this is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you that things will go wrong, and that's all right.